you truly rely on? A husband who swears he'll always take care of you, or yourself? Emma had never doubted the answer until her own world began to crack at the seams. Who would have thought the real danger was closer than it seemed, sitting right behind the wheel of her life? That morning, Emma was driving her car, calm and confident as always. She ran her own business, a hardware and construction supply store she had opened a few years ago. Lately, things were going well. Clients were coming non-stop, and the orders were growing. She was on her way back from an important meeting where she had just signed a big contract with a major construction company. It was a real victory. The business was thriving, and with it, her confidence in the future. Her phone rang. It was her husband, Daniel. "Hey, where are you?" he asked casually, though there was clear interest in his voice. "On my way home. Just finished the meeting." "Everything went great," Emma replied, eyes on the road, one hand on the wheel, the other holding the phone to her ear. "Well done. I'll make dinner. Come home soon." "I love you," Daniel said and hung up. Emma smiled. The past few months had been tense between them. Most of the burden had fallen on her shoulders. But today, after such a successful deal, it finally felt like things were falling back into place. She placed the phone on the passenger seat and lightly pressed the gas pedal. The road ahead was nearly empty, only a few cars in the distance. Emma relaxed, already imagining a cozy evening. But the next moment, everything went wrong. The car in front of her suddenly slammed on the brakes. Emma reacted instinctively. She hit her brakes too. But it was too late. The wheels skidded on the slippery road. She felt the car begin to spin. And then, the crash. A metallic crunch. Pain. Her head slammed into something hard, and bright flashes lit up before her eyes. She tried to hold onto the steering wheel, but her fingers wouldn't obey. Another harder hit, and everything faded. A sharp ringing in her ears, blurred vision. Then, silence. When they pulled Emma out of the wrecked car, she couldn't feel her body. The ambulance arrived quickly. Medics bustled around, checking her pulse, trying to bring her back. But Emma couldn't hear, couldn't see. She was loaded onto a stretcher and rushed to the hospital. She spent several days in the ICU, unconscious. Doctors were cautious. Her condition was critical. Her chances slim. Daniel made all the decisions now. He came to the hospital every day, sitting quietly by her side, pretending to worry. And meanwhile, Emma's life hung by a thread. She woke up slowly. Her head was heavy. Her body felt like lead. Even opening her eyes took all her strength. The ceiling of a hospital room blurred before her. She immediately shut her eyes again. Something felt wrong. She couldn't move. The last thing she remembered, that horrible crash. Gradually, sounds started to seep in. Rustling, quiet voices. Everything seemed wrapped in fog. Then, footsteps. Someone entered the room. A familiar voice. Daniel. He was speaking on the phone. Emma tensed, as much as her condition allowed. His voice was calm, too calm, cold. And then she heard a phrase that pierced through her like a blade. The plan didn't work. She's still alive, though she's in a coma. Emma stopped breathing. Those words echoed inside her skull. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. Her heart pounded wildly, but she stayed still, not revealing that she had regained consciousness. It was like a dark wave had drowned her mind. Daniel kept talking, but his words blurred into a low hum, a distant echo. She no longer heard the meaning. Only one thing remained crystal clear: betrayal. Emma couldn't focus, her thoughts tangled like fog. What did he mean? What plan? Questions raced through her mind. Everything felt like a dream, a terrible, surreal illusion. She lay motionless, frozen, trying to make sense of what she had heard. Fear gripped her body, and her mind drowned in the overwhelming sense that something terrible had happened. But she had no strength, no clarity to act. All she could do was stay calm and pretend she was still unconscious. Did he want me dead? The thought seeped into her consciousness slowly, like poison. A month passed. Emma was finally discharged from the hospital. She still felt weak, her legs shook, and dizziness came in waves. The doctors assured her it was all due to the trauma. But Emma knew. It wasn't just physical. She couldn't forget those words she'd overheard in her hospital room. The plan didn't work. She's still alive. They echoed in her mind every single day, like a curse. When Daniel brought her home, Emma sensed something had changed. The house, once filled with warmth and comfort, now made her uneasy. Being alone with Daniel became unbearable. He acted as usual, caring, smiling, but every glance felt fake.
Every gesture seemed staged. "How are you feeling, Em?" he asked the next day, approaching her bed. His voice was soft, but there was something foreign in it, something cold. "Fine," she replied shortly, not looking up. She knew she couldn't be wrong. No, she had no solid proof, but her guts knew he was dangerous. Emma made a decision. She needed time, protection, and she knew exactly who to trust. "I was thinking," maybe my mom can stay with us for a few days until I feel stronger. She can help around the house and also the paper." Daniel froze. His face tightened for a second, but he quickly composed himself. "Of course, invite her, whatever you want," he said with a smile. But Emma noticed. His fingers were trembling slightly. Her mother arrived the next day. For the first time in a long while, Emma breathed freely. Her mom cooked, cared for her, stayed close. Her presence was like a quiet shield. Daniel began spending less time at home, and when he was there, he barely spoke. And whenever he did appear, Emma felt a cold breeze over her skin. Alone in her room, she found herself replaying moments in her mind. How Daniel had grown distant in recent months. He would leave often, avoid conversations, hide things. Before, they had shared everything. Now he kept secrets. Emma was putting the pieces together. He was planning something terrible. And she was planning it. One day, Daniel left. Business. The house fell into a rare silence. Emma sat on the couch, holding a mug of hot tea. Her mother was in the kitchen, busy preparing lunch. Everything seemed calm, but tension inside her didn't let go. Daniel's words, his tone, his eyes, they kept spinning in her mind. Then her gaze fell on Daniel's laptop. He usually took it with him or made sure it was locked. But today, in his rush, he had left it. Emma leaned forward. She listened. The kitchen was still bustling. She had time. Her heart pounded harder. Carefully, she looked away. The screen lit up revealing the desktop. She didn't know exactly what she was looking for. Her hand moved on the phone, guiding the mouse. She opened the folder with business documents. Everything seemed normal, familiar, until her eyes landed on an open chat window. Apparently, Daniel hadn't closed the messaging app before leaving. A knot tightened in her chest. She clicked. At first, typical business messages. Daniel was chatting with her. Their longtime business partner. Emma had always trusted him. He'd been with them from the beginning, helping build the company. The more she read, the more uneasy she became. Phrases, subtle hints, the kind of thing that anyone else might have looked for. But not Emma. Not anymore. It would have been so much easier if she hadn't survived. Emma froze as she read the message. Her hands trembled, her heart pounded. She read it again and again. She couldn't believe her eyes. What were they talking about? Who did Victor mean? She kept reading, panic rising with every word. Each new message poured through her, shattering her composure. If she had died, we could have transferred all the documents to you. She left everything to you. Victor had written. Yeah, but the plan failed. She's still alive, Daniel replied. Cold, calculated, detached, not a trace of remorse. Emma couldn't breathe. What had once been a quiet suspicion now formed a clear, horrifying picture. They had planned to kill her, her own husband, and Victor, the man she had trusted from the very beginning. They had conspired to get rid of her and take everything: the business, the house, the money, everything she had built years of hard work. All those sleepless nights, the effort, faith in their shared dream, none of it mattered. She was just an obstacle, a liability. A sharp pain gripped her chest. Not physical, but physical. This can't be true, Emma tried to convince herself. But the screen in front of her didn't lie. She kept reading. Don't worry, she told me. We'll find a way to finish what we started. Just don't raise suspicion, Victor wrote. I'll do it quietly. Those words crushed the last of her illusions. They weren't going to stop. Not even now. Not even after she survived. Something snapped inside her. Suddenly, everything made sense. Daniel's coldness, his forced concern, the fake tenderness. It was all an act. He'd been playing the loving husband, just waiting for the right moment to strike. Emma forced herself to close the laptop and, with shaking hands, put it back in its place. A storm raged inside her. How could he? How could the man who had shared her bed, her life, her dreams with, try to kill her for money, for a business? And Victor, that betrayal cut into her. Emma collapsed onto the ground. Her body trembled. She was trapped. Daniel knew she was weak. He could strike at any moment. Her own home was no longer a refuge. It was a village. But Emma wouldn't let fear break her. She knew, now, more than ever, she had to stay calm. Daniel couldn't find out if he knew the truth. She walked to the window and stared out. Cars passed by. People rushed through their day. And in that moment, Emma understood. Her life had split into two halves, before and after. She wasn't going to surrender. Yes, her enemy was close, in her own home. But now she knew, and she was ready to fight back. After reading the messages, Emma didn't sleep. What awoke inside her wasn't fear, it was cold, focused resolve. She would no longer be a victim. She wouldn't let them finish what they had started. But she had to be careful. One wrong move could cost her her life. Emma knew she needed evidence. Yes, the messages were already something, but she wanted them as much as she could have them. Everything needed to be documented, preferably with help from professionals. She made her decision. First step, find a lawyer. Only an experienced attorney could protect her if things spiraled out of control. And this had to stay. Daniel couldn't suspect a thing. One morning, after Daniel left on business, Emma turned to her mother. I think I'll go for a short walk, she said softly, avoiding details. I just need some fresh air. In truth, she was headed to a law firm. The sense of danger never left Emma, not for a single moment. Even during the meeting with the lawyer, she felt a tightness inside her chest. But on the outside, she held her composure. There was no room for weakness. She laid everything out clearly. The car crash, her suspicions, and most importantly, she showed him the messages she had found on Daniel's laptop. The lawyer listened carefully, not interrupting once. Then, after a brief pause, he looked her straight in the eyes. Daniel seems like a dangerous man. If he really caused that accident, he might try again. Emma had already told herself these words hundreds of times. She could feel it. Her enemy was close. She couldn't just disappear. She couldn't confront him openly. Her position was still too fragile. But now she wasn't alone anymore. She had allies. The next step was the hardest: going to the police. Every minute she spent in that house became a test of endurance. Daniel was always nearby. His glances, his touches, his concern, all of it felt like a performance now. Too polished, too calculated. And that made it even scarier. He was waiting for the right moment. Emma could feel it in her bones. One day, when Daniel was out again on business, she slipped away and went to the police station. She brought screenshots of the messages, handwritten notes, copies of documents. The officers listened attentively, took her statement, and promised to begin an investigation. "Be very careful," they said. "We've documented everything. We'll be watching. But right now, you need to stay calm." Every step forward drained her. Every glance from Daniel felt like the tip of a knife. But Emma couldn't turn back. There was no going back. She returned home with a heavy heart. Now all she could do was wait. The police were on the case, but she was still living under the same roof with a man who could strike at any moment. Daniel was unpredictable, and that made him even more dangerous. But Emma was no longer the woman she once was. Now she was ready to fight. Since filing the report, everything had changed. Each day spent beside Daniel felt like walking a tightrope. He started to notice the shift in her, and slowly he began to change too. His calm demeanor faded. He became tense, sharp, left the house more often, always with excuses. Sometimes Emma caught his gaze, watchful, suspicious, calculating. He sensed it. She wasn't the same anymore. One evening at dinner, he suddenly stopped and looked at her. "You're acting strange. Is everything okay?" he asked, setting down his fork. His voice was tight, and in his eyes, for the first time she saw something new: suspicion. "Just tired," she replied calmly, avoiding his gaze. But the air between them had changed. He knew she was hiding something. Daniel began checking his phone constantly, disappearing into other rooms, whispering through messages. Emma was sure he was planning something. She knew she couldn't give in to fear. She couldn't show that she knew more than she let on. One morning, Daniel left again, off to meet Victor. It was an ordinary day, eerily quiet. Emma had grown used to these sudden errands. She was sitting on the couch when her phone rang. Her lawyer's name flashed on the screen. "Emma, we've got news." His voice was calm but tight. "The police have arrested Victor. He's now under investigation." "Arrested?" she repeated, hardly believing what she'd just heard. "Yes, this is a big step. Now we have a much better chance at going after Daniel. But be extremely careful. He's likely already suspicious." Emma slowly ended the call and stood frozen. The world around her faded for a moment. She stood there, in the middle of the room, as if suspended in a void. Victor had been arrested, and now things were even more dangerous. Daniel was alone, cornered, and he would act soon, she was sure of it. But now she had a chance. And she reminded herself of one crucial thing: she was still alive. And as long as she breathed, she would fight. She knew, from this moment on, everything would change. Daniel was cornered, and now he would definitely make a move. All that was left was to wait, for him to show his hand. When he came home, Emma saw it instantly. He was on edge. His face was pale, his movement sharp, his eyes darting around the room. He paced nervously, glancing at her with a strange mix of suspicion and agitation, as if expecting something. Victor's not answering his phone, he muttered one evening while they sat in the kitchen. Maybe he's busy? Emma suggested carefully, trying to mask the tension in her voice. That's not like him, Daniel snapped, irritation and something darker lurking beneath his tone. In the following days, he was rarely home. And when he was, he barely spoke, always tense. Emma felt it. He was preparing to run. One day, she noticed him hastily stuffing papers into a folder, shoving documents into his briefcase. He wasn't hiding it anymore. He was in a rush. Then, just days later, he disappeared. He didn't come home. The house fell silent. The threat was gone. But in its place settled a haunting, oppressive stillness. The police declared Daniel a fugitive. Emma wasn't surprised when they told her he had gone into hiding. She was safe, technically, but the unease wouldn't let go. She was terrified that he'd find a way back, find a way to finish what he'd started. A week passed, then another. Emma tried to rebuild her life, but her thoughts always circled back to one question. Where is he? Is he alive? Waiting? Planning? Then one morning, as Emma sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, her phone rang. The caller ID showed a police number. Emma Williams? A calm voice asked. We're calling to inform you. Daniel has been apprehended. He was trying to cross the border using fake documents. He's now in custody. The officer's tone was steady, almost routine. But Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her so intensely it made her dizzy. He's been arrested? She repeated, barely able to believe it. Yes, you have nothing more to worry about. From now on, everything will proceed legally. She hung up the phone, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she sat back, without flinching at every creak or shadow. It was over. He could no longer hurt her. With Daniel's arrest, it wasn't just the danger that ended. An entire, terrifying chapter of Emma's life had come to a close. And she was no longer the same woman. She no longer lived in fear. She had freed herself, not only from a man who had tried to end her life, but from the deepest fears that had haunted her: loneliness, betrayal, the loss of control. Her life was hers again. The first few weeks after Daniel's arrest weren't easy. Emma still woke up in the middle of the night, heart racing, drenched in cold sweat, as if some unseen threat still lurked. But day by day, the pain eased. She was no longer tied to a man who had betrayed her. She was free. And yet with that freedom came silence. Her mother had returned home. There was no longer any immediate threat. The house was hers again. But now it felt empty. One afternoon, while walking through the park, Emma passed an animal shelter. Behind the fence, puppies barked and played. But one stood out. A small black dog with ridiculously large ears, sitting quietly in the corner, watching her. There was so much loneliness in his eyes, her heart clenched. He was like her, lost, broken, but still alive. Without hesitation, she brought him home. She named him Bim. Within days, he filled the house with new sounds, the patter of paws, happy barking, playful mischief. With him, Emma felt something she hadn't in a long time. The house came alive again. That little dog became a symbol of a new beginning, a life with loyalty, with no fear, with unconditional love. Every day, Emma realized more and more. Happiness wasn't in money. It wasn't in success. It was in the small things. Tiny pause at the door, soft breathing beside her at night, the ability to trust again. Now she was ready for new connections, maybe new love, but above all, she would never betray herself again. Emma sat by the fireplace. Bim was curled up in her lap, peacefully asleep. New Year's was approaching, And for the first time in years, she smiled. Her life was hers again, and she was finally ready to begin anew. If you enjoyed this story, please support me with a thumbs up. It's just one click for you. But for me, it's a huge joy and motivation to keep writing. Thank you.